Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for joining. My name is Tessa Archibald. I'm a policy associate for the Animal Welfare Institute, and I manage the Homes for Horses Coalition. Just a couple things to keep in mind as we get started. Please stay on mute so that we can hear our speaker clearly, and this will be recorded. So for HHC members, I'll send out the recording in just a few days. We will answer questions throughout and at the end, so feel free to put your questions in the chat. Most of you joining today are members of the Homes for Horses Coalition, but for those of you who aren't, I can share a short introduction. The Homes for Horses Coalition has been active since 2007, when it started as a unique coalition to help horse rescues and ultimately help equines by ending horse slaughter. Today, HHG is led by the Animal Welfare Institute and American Wild Horse Conservation, and we have over 500 members who are equine rescue directors, equine professionals, and equine advocates all across the country. HHG is dedicated to providing spaces for collaboration and connection within the equine rescue world, as well as furthering advocacy to improve the lives of equines through legislation and policy. We have a fantastic speaker joining us today, Stephanie from Grants for Animals. Stephanie Mathers has been involved in animal rescue and welfare since adopting her first cat, Shakespeare, in 2002 from the Capital Area Humane Society in Michigan. After moving to Utah in 2010 to be closer to the mountains, Stephanie started helping animal rescues and sanctuaries in her spare time. Her roles varied from animal care volunteer to board member to grant writer. In the meantime, she fostered a successful 20-year career in education. During this time, she wrote grants for her own school and for smaller nonprofits in the education space. In 2021, Stephanie started focusing more time and energy on her work writing grants for animal-related nonprofits and officially started Grants for Animals, LLC. After expanding her client base to maximum capacity, she started creating online courses and resources so that her work could help more nonprofits and more animals. Today, Stephanie enjoys working with a small group of full-service clients, as well as the students in her online courses and consulting clients. In just over 3 years, Grants for Animals LLC has been involved in earning, managing, and reporting on over $4 million in funding for animal-related nonprofits. Thank you, Stephanie, so much for joining us today and for sharing your experience with us.
Thank you. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here. All right, are we set with that? Perfect. So I do want to encourage everyone who is joining us live, please feel free to drop questions in the chat. My teammate Colleen is here to both pick questions to give out to the group at the 3 checkpoints where we're going to stop and answer questions. And she can also drop resources. If you have something very specific, she might answer you directly in the chat. So please feel free to use that. And we will, as Tessa said, take questions about 3 different times throughout our presentation. So I just want to start quickly with some myths and realities of grant writing for those of you who may be a little bit new to it, because these are some really common things that I hear. There are no grants for animal-related nonprofits. That's probably the #1 thing that I hear. And let me just say, if that's true, I've really made a lot of bad life choices. You have to be a great writer to earn grants. Grants will solve all your funding issues. And you have to hire a professional grant writer. So let's dispel some of these myths. First of all, as Tessa said, I am living proof that there are plenty of grants out there for animal-related nonprofits. In 2024 alone, Grants for Animals earned over $1.3 million for our clients. All of our clients except one are animal-related nonprofits. There's one that is an educational client, but everybody else is animal-related. In terms of being a great writer, I absolutely believe grant writing can be learned, and that's what we're going to do today. We're going to look at some really specific examples. In my opinion, organization is actually the most important thing for a grant writer, and probably second up is persistence. The writing thing, there are so many amazing tools out there these days that your writing can be improved through tools, and that's not the #1 thing that makes a good grant writer. Next, grants will solve all of your funding issues. If you are just getting into grants, I think an awesome goal to start with is to try to get 10 to 20% of your budget covered by grants. That's a great place to start. Now, there are definitely organizations that have 100% of their budget covered by grants, mostly in the human service or medical industries, but there are exceptions. And so you can always build up from the 10 to 20%, but it is just one income stream. And then you have to hire a professional grant writer. So obviously that's what I am. So I'm not trying to, talk myself out of business, but the truth is an in-house grant writer is going to be able to really tell your story, work with your team, and be so embedded in the organization that in many cases they can be more successful than somebody's that's just going to come in and write one grant for you. So if you have the ability to grow a grant writer in-house, I always recommend that. Now, some orgs just don't have the capacity, but if you can do it, I would start there. So that's just a little bit about some misconceptions about grants and the reality, as I see it at least. So, what we're going to do today, I'm going to talk very briefly about grant readiness because if those things are not in place, then none of the proposal building blocks we'll be talking about can even be created or matter. After we do that, we're going to go through all of the different building blocks that you see on the screen there. I'm going to give you at least one example of each, depending on how much time we have. I have multiple examples for most of them. And along the way, we'll stop with other tips, questions, and answers and things like that. I want to encourage you to take notes during this presentation. And one way to do that, there are multiple ways, is to divide things up into a quadrant. And when we talk about grants, there are typically going to be short-term tasks, so things you can complete in days or weeks. And then there are going to be more long-term tasks, which would be things you can complete in months or really even years if you are a younger organization. Some of these steps may be things that you're going to build over time. And very few people in the nonprofit world can function alone. That is a lot to put on your shoulders. So, for each of these things, as you take notes about some action steps, short term and long term, I encourage you to jot down ideas of who you can reach out to within your organization or beyond to help. Tessa already did the intro, but just to wrap a little bow on that, I am a recovering educator. I did everything from English teacher to middle school principal and grant and policy writer in the world of education. And now my focus is grants for animals, environment, and educational organizations. I officially started Grants for Animals in 2021, and we have been very successful in working with an extremely small group of clients to earn over $4.3 million in grant funding. My contact information is there, and we will also be dropping that in the chat. One thing I will tell you is I do answer every single email that makes it into my inbox. So if you have any follow-up questions, please feel free to email me. I usually have, after a webinar like this, something like a 5-day response time because I tend to get a lot of emails, but I promise I will respond to your email if you send me one. So to start, we're going to talk about grant readiness, and this may be review for some of you who are extremely grant savvy, but please bear with me because these things just have to be in place if you're going to be successful with the building blocks that we'll talk about later. So overall, grants require you to have an amazing systems, processes, and organization to your nonprofit. And it's really one of the last income streams that is going to become available to you. Getting grant ready is the most important step you can take to ensure that over the next 12 to 18 months, your sustained grant writing campaign is successful. Now, if you hold accreditations like GFAS or Equus Guardian, congratulations, you are totally grant ready. Colleen and I have been in the process of helping an organization go through the GFAS process, and it will get you grant ready and beyond. Even the process that you took in applying to be part of this coalition, a lot of those questions that you answered along the way really show what it takes to become grant readiness. So if you are part of the coalition, you are probably most of the way there as well. So we're going to talk about just some aspects of being grant ready. One is paperwork. So you need to have a 501c3 in general. A fiscal sponsorship can work temporarily, but overall for many grant opportunities, they want you to have that 501. Bylaws, articles of incorporation, a DBA. In California, it's called a fictitious business name. All of that you should have as high quality PDFs. And if there's not somebody in your organization who knows how to manipulate and manage PDFs, you need to volunteer somebody to become that person. You basically need somebody who can put a lot of different individual PDFs into one PDF, reorder them, put signatures, put dates on those. More and more grant applications I am seeing, they say, all right, we want these 25 things, and it's got to all be on one PDF that is sent to us via email. So you can't just go to FedEx and print them all individually and put them into a package. So if you don't have somebody who already knows how to do that, I would nominate someone. Your board. Your board needs to be more than just the founders. In fact, the founders should be a minority on your board. So if you have 2 founders, you should have 5 board members. You should meet monthly. Now, if that's not happening, at least quarterly and build up to monthly. Then your board should not just be eating bonbons and talking about how awesome you are on Facebook. They need to be helping create budgets, policies, and helping govern your organization and supporting those of you who are EDs or have other titles like president. Your board should be supporting you in your work. Your board should take minutes and they should be available. I have seen a variety of different applications that require one set of board minutes, and there needs to be a board contract. Policies. These are some of the different policies I have seen that are required to attach to different grant applications. Your animal acquisition or intake. So that would be under what circumstances will you bring an animal in? Will you pay for an animal at auction or will you not? Those sorts of things. Your spay neuter gelding policy, euthanasia, anti-discrimination or harassment, conflict of interest, and whistleblower. And the last 2 will help improve your charity navigator rating. I I have seen one grant that asked for a whistleblower policy to be included, but those 2 are more to have for that charity navigator rating, which we'll talk about in a moment. Financials. You will need 2 years or more of quality records. So that's a 990 profit and loss, and a balance sheet, hopefully run from high quality bookkeeping software. If you are not using bookkeeping software yet, I want to encourage you in 2025 to do that. I do have a deal that I have through QuickBooks for 30% off 6 months. There are other bookkeeping softwares as well, but I have seen a lot of grants where they will say, hey, we want all your financials, but we also want a profit loss run for the past month. And then we want your balance sheet as of today. If you are just manually doing those reports at the end of each year, you're not going to be able to pull that together for that grant application. So having a bookkeeping software makes those reports so much easier. You also need a current year operating budget created hopefully prior to each fiscal year. So you should have a 2025 one up and running. Your board of directors should have seen it and been able to provide feedback and approve it. If you do not have one of those in place, I want to encourage you to do that. It is just a projected budget. It changes throughout the year. That's completely natural, but that's something you're going to need for almost every application. And your net operating income should typically be positive. There may be 1 or 2 years when on purpose you draw things down or you have an overage. But if you have to submit multiple years of history, it should look like overall you are making money and you are not depleting any sort of strategic reserve that you have. Data, you should be tracking your animals, even if you offer permanent sanctuary. So GFAS and Equus both have an animal census that they're very similar. Grants for Animals has an animal tracking template. And if you do adoptions, you may want to consider purchasing a software that is made for that type of organization. But if you're not doing adoptions, you can probably just do this yourself. So in addition to tracking your animals, you should be tracking all sorts of impact numbers. So if you offer any sort of animal assisted therapies or experiences, you want to be tracking that. If you do any kind of educational tours or humane education, you want to track those numbers. And it's not required, but having even a very simple 1 to 2 page PDF of an annual report is completely priceless for grants. Many applications will have this section at the end where they say, hey, if there's anything else you want to attach to tell us more about your organization, please do it. And to have an annual report from the previous year with some great stories or impact numbers is really priceless for that sort of a situation. Couple other suggested actions: curate your digital presence on at least 2 social media accounts. That could be anything from TikTok to LinkedIn and any of the platforms in between. Right now, a lot of people are having different opinions about various platforms, so just pick 2 that you're the most comfortable with. Update your nonprofit profiles. GuideStar and Charity Navigator are the 2 main ones. Great Nonprofits is another that you can look at. Sometimes grantors will actually say, we will look at your Charity Navigator, send us the link to that. But sometimes they won't, and they will still look. So you need to get on those sites and see how you are ranked and what you can do to improve your rankings. You should have an entity specific email. So for example, what you don't want to do, and this is not a real email, is say something like homesforhorses@gmail.com. That is not a professional looking organizational based email. If you look at the Homes for Horses website, it says something like info@homesforhorses.org. If you haven't set up entity specific emails, I want to encourage you to do that because it will make things look that much more professional. And finally, if you don't have a team that is supporting you in your grant writing endeavors, I want to encourage you to absolutely have a few people that you can turn to. So in terms of grant readiness, if you are already completely grant ready, then thank you for bearing with us with that. If you are not, I want you to jot down in your notes, what are some actions you can take in the next few days to become more grant ready? Is there someone you can email? Is there a document you can get a hold of? Can you create a calendar event for yourself for some tasks you want to do? I know for me, if I don't make a calendar event to do something in the future, it will typically not get done. So that's my little hack that I use. Then we have resources. So Colleen is going to drop in the chat a big list of resources for grant readiness. And this has everything from our monthly newsletter, free quiz, social media, and then we have some other things that are paid, like animal tracking template, policy starter kit, grant writing tools, train your own grant writer, which I will talk about more later, and QuickBooks discount. And of course, you can also look on the entire interweb for any other grant readiness resources. You don't have to use ours. So, Colleen, are there any questions about grant readiness that have come in so far?
Nice and quiet at the moment, but just drop the links for everybody to check out, and you're welcome to pop in and add to the chat if you guys want.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. So we will move on, and I want to acknowledge we're going to be fast forwarding a lot here. So in between grant readiness and writing a proposal, there are a lot of things that have to happen, but they're beyond the scope of this specific webinar. So having a needs assessment, doing your research, and identifying some good fit grants. So this presentation doesn't cover that. We do have a ton of tools if you are interested in help with those things. But we are going to skip forward to where you have identified a grant that you feel like is a really good fit, and you are going to apply for it. And I'm going to walk you through the different pieces of what that might look like. So when you find a good fit grant, there are typically 3 ways you might apply. One is an LOI, which is a letter of inquiry or introduction. And sometimes an LOI, you send that in and then you get a check in the mail, which is what you should all be calling into your reality, just getting checks in the mail. But sometimes they will send you a much longer application to fill out if they like your LOI. It just depends. Then there are portal and form grants, which are ones where you're going to go onto a certain website and all of the questions we talk about here, they are probably going to be in there, except they're going to be broken up into different text boxes. It's not going to be one long document. And then there's a long form application or narrative. The Latham Foundation for Humane Education is a great example for any of you who are doing humane education. They basically give a list of all the things they want, and I think they say it has to be 10 pages or less, and that's the guidance you get. And then you create that narrative, including everything that they have asked for within the page limit. That's a long form type of application. So what we're going to talk about today can actually apply to all of these. In fact, even within your LOI, you may include some of these building blocks. I want to encourage you, do not spin your wheels. So before you draft anything, I would really recommend that you create one or more master documents that's going to house all of this information. So for our clients, we actually have a couple different things. We have a quick facts sheet that has, the address, the EIN, all those different things that you have to put into every single grant form you fill out. And then we have a master proposal template, which has all of these building blocks. Now, we actually have a general operations one and also one for every program, because sometimes organizations have even 5 or 6 programs. Sometimes it's really just the rescue operation. That's your main program. And then we also have LOI templates, a general one, and one for each program. Now, those are things that are built out over months and months. Even when we're doing it for an org, it takes quite a while to get all of that in place. But I would start the documents now, and you can be adding to them. And 1 year from now, you will be amazed how much you already have written when you go to open any given application. So the pieces of the proposal, all of the pieces I'm going to talk about, I'll give examples. So these are examples from actual applications, but we have changed the names of the orgs, the names of the programs, and the names of the grantors. So due to the nature of online presentations, I couldn't just put 7 paragraphs of text on the screen. I wouldn't do that to you. Some of these I have a lot more text on the screen than I normally like to do, but we've got to work through the examples. So just so you know, some of these are parts of larger answers, and I will try to point those out when we get to the ones that applies to. So the first building block of a grant proposal is your summary. This is usually the first thing that you'll be asked to write after you enter everything. But we're actually going to say this to the end, and I recommend you do not write this until you do every other text box or every other section of that proposal. Typically, the next thing you'll see is a needs statement. So what is that? This is where you're going to present a problem that your grant request will solve. So there are 2 types of data you might include. One is local data. So maybe how many calls you get every month about rehoming or surrendering a horse, or how many people in your community would qualify for a certain type of animal assisted therapy that you are offering. Having that local data can be really great if you're applying to community foundations or other more local foundations. Then you can have big picture data, which shows why whatever you are trying to solve is an issue across communities, states, or even countries. Having one type is required. You need to have at least one type, but extra credit if you have both, because if you can show that you're solving the issue on a local and a larger level, that's really going to validate what you're doing. So a couple examples. I am going to read these examples, and this is just kind of the teacher in me. I hate reading examples because I know you can read, but this is the nature of Zoom, right? So here's our first example, and this is for an org that does ground-based therapy with people suffering from dementia. Every 65 seconds, someone in the US is diagnosed with Alzheimer's, the leading type of dementia. An estimated 6.9 million Americans over 65 are living with the disease, a number expected to double in the next 30 years. Currently, there is no known cure, and tragically, 1 in 3 seniors die with Alzheimer's or another form of dementia. The dot 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 means I've taken out some text to make it short enough for a PowerPoint. Programs that can improve the quality of life for the person with dementia as well as their caregivers at no cost and without side effects can be transformative. So, some stuff to point out with this one. First of all, there are a lot of statistics and they're pretty compelling. The idea that the people living with Alzheimer's is going to double over the next 30 years is something that always blows me away whenever I read it. And I've seen that statistic many times. Another thing that is at the end of this is we are already hinting at the solution. Now, the need statement is not when you present your solutions, but you can see that we're hinting that there is a solution that is free, without side effects, without pharmaceuticals, and just how great that that can be. Next one. This is from a companion animal proposal, but I wanted to just show some of the different varieties of statistics you can have. The rising cost of caring for a pet is one of the most significant equity barriers to pet guardianship. Increasing costs of food, supplies, housing restrictions, lack of access to affordable vet care make it difficult for many people to provide lifetime care for their companion animals. According to MarketWatch, the average cost of owning a dog in California, which is where this org was, is over $35K, making it the most expensive state for dog ownership in the nation. I think my dog already cost me that much money, and I've had him for 2 months. Um, a significant portion of this cost is veterinary care, including spay neuter surgeries. A survey by this pet health insurance found 16% of pet owners say they have lost a pet because they could not afford vet care. 30% say they avoid taking their pet to the vet because of the cost, and 30% said they had to rely on family and friends. So, a lot of great data in here showing why this is for low cost and no cost veterinary clinics. Now, something I want to say related to need statements. I have never and am not ever afraid that AI is going to take over my life as a grant writer because I just don't think it has the capacity to totally do it. Some people will tell you you can write your whole proposal using AI. I would not recommend that because they actually screen for that and you might be completely disqualified. But there are a lot of people who are really into that. I'm not worried about that at all for a lot of reasons, which that's a different webinar. However, the needs statement is one of the places where I absolutely will use something like ChatGPT to get me started in terms of finding good resources and good sources that will cite statistics that are recent and specific to a county or specific to an area that I am looking for. So I do think using some sort of AI can be very beneficial in your needs statement, even just to get you started. I would not ever recommend letting AI write a final section of any proposal. Like I said, there are some grants that say we screen for it, and if it looks like it's AI, we will throw it out. But definitely, it's a great research tool for this sort of thing. Okay, another section. Next section that you will typically be asked is a brief history of the organization. And this is also something I would absolutely put in any LOI that you write. So, what this is, tell your story. How did you start? What have you done? And where are you going? And the great news about this is you may already have this drafted on your website or somewhere else where you've shared it or even in social media posts, and you can just customize this. So some things you want to include, any important impact numbers over the years, dates, if you have flagship programs, what are they called? If your nonprofit is kind of defined by a very charismatic founder, that is something to talk about. It's a personal choice and you want to think about how you're branding your organization because in many cases the overall message should be about the work you're doing, not the one person who started it. However, if you do have a really great founder story, you can include that. And then where are you going in the future? So this can be longer, and I'm actually going to share one of the brief histories that it's probably about triple the length of what I'm going to share, but I kind of copied and cut things out so that you could get the idea of how the story gets told. Our organization was co-founded in 2002 by veterinarian founder number one, along with her husband, founder number two, with the vision of providing a bright future to animals in need in low-income underserved communities. Our work originated in Mexico, where companion animal suffering is rampant and resources are scarce. We began an international dog rescue, then moved to spay neuter and humane education. Our work grew to encompass ending the brutal act of electrocution as a means of killing unwanted animals in Mexico via a humane euthanasia program. Eventually, we also expanded to include free access to care for low income families. After years of focusing on Mexico, we began to look at underserved communities here in the US and implemented a series of programs. Continued same history. In 2012, recognizing a huge need for access to veterinary wellness and spay neuter services within the low income Latino community right here in California, we began hosting free clinics in underserved neighborhoods. Over the years, our organization has worked to grow and expand our programming responsibly to serve more animals in need on both sides of the border. This included opening our own shelter, really great shelter, in City State, in addition to two shelters south of the border. We have run multiple six-figure capital campaigns to support our growth. All of our programs target the animals in the greatest need of help, but the least likely to receive that help due to barriers. So there is a little bit more to this brief history that I didn't include, but you can see it takes the reader through the whole story. Where did things start? What are some of the key programs? And then where are they at right now? And that's the kind of story that you want to have in your brief history. This is also a place where you can be very heartfelt. So, one of the orgs that we work with is like very into different spiritual things. And I mean, their whole brief history is about how they manifested this sanctuary for donkeys, and it's totally within their own personality. And I want to encourage you to do that because you don't need to make it just sound very technical and this happened, this happened, this happened. This is your chance to really be speaking on brand with how what you're putting out for your nonprofit. The next thing you will probably be asked is a program or project description. So about 40% of all grants are program or project grants. This is one of the biggest categories of grants. So this would be a description of the who, what, when, where, how, and why. Now, if you're requesting general operations, then this will not be a section of the proposal. Instead, they're going to ask you overall list all of your programs briefly and kind of what you do. But we will assume that some of you may be interested in the program or project description. So we're going to talk about that. So this first one is for a one-time project and infrastructure redesign project that I'll also be talking about when we get to the budget section. Really Great Sanctuaries infrastructure redesign project will replace and enhance the current aged fencing system with robust, safe, donkey-friendly barriers to ensure the long-term welfare and security of our current residents and incoming wild donkeys rescued from the slaughter pipeline. This project will include the installation of durable panel fencing capable of accommodating social structures of donkey herds, the replacement of deteriorating 40-year-old panels in the special needs area, and the secured enclosure of a new 2.5-acre tract for our efforts. Took some stuff out leading up to the next section. By completing this project, we will increase the number of wild donkeys that can be rescued and given permanent sanctuary for years to come. Now, this program and project description was actually about 5 paragraphs because they went into a lot of detail about the specific materials that were going to be used, why they were going to be used, how they were going to hold up. But hopefully just from this one paragraph, you get the idea. And then notice at the end, it's showing what is this going to accomplish? this is going to let us rescue more donkeys. All right, the next example, this is from the ground-based therapy for those suffering with Alzheimer's. The great organization in-person's workshops provide the opportunity for people living with early stage dementia and their care partners to try something new together and learn skills as they experience non-riding activities with horses. Our workshops provide many benefits without the use of invasive medical procedures or pharmaceuticals. The power of the connection helps participants feel calm, confident, and present. They reference a research study that validated their work, and this is continued on the next slide. During workshops, participants relax, focus, and connect with themselves and each other. There is no horseback riding. All activities take place on the ground. Trained facilitators guide ground interactions between horses and participants and lead awareness activities that bring attention into the moment. After some initial guided sensory exercises, participants meet the horses in a slow-paced introduction. Participants spend time observing, meeting, grooming, and interacting with the horses. Workshops take place once a week for 3 weeks and include mindfulness practices, introductions to equine assisted exercises, group processes, and reflections using photographs and journals. So one reason I wanted to show this one is you can see, especially on this second slide, you really want to paint the picture of what exactly is an in-person workshop. What happens at that? What does it look like? Now, this is shortened, but one way to approach the program and project description is to really think about all 5 senses and how can you explain this program to somebody using as many senses as possible so that the reader can feel like they are experiencing it. And I think that, especially with animal related types of grants, we are appealing to people who are responding to animals and are understanding the human animal bond, the value of animals in and of themselves as beings. And the more you can try to tap into that heartfeltness, even while explaining all the W's of your program, the more you are going to stand out in terms of your application. Goals. So sometimes this is called goals, sometimes it's called outcomes. Sometimes they may even say, just what's your timeline? But at some point, you're going to be asked what you want to accomplish with your proposal. So I am a huge fan of SMART goals, and I won't give you a whole TED talk about SMART goals because most of you have probably heard that before. But SMART goal format just means specific, measurable, attainable, relevant to your mission, and time bound. And you can Google that. If you have never heard the term SMART goals, I definitely encourage you become familiar with it so that you can put your goals in a SMART goal format. And then sometimes it will ask for one, sometimes it will ask for many. It's up to you. One very well written and specific goal is better than 3 vague goals, but do whatever will capture what you're doing in your project or program. So here's one example. Our 2025 program goals include the following. Hold at least 36 in-person workshops that serve at least 6 counties, primarily in Northern California in 2025. We've got a lot of the who, what, where, and when there. Now, at least is your best friend because if you use the term at least or a similar term, you're basically saying, hey, here's the minimum we want to do, but we can do more. Especially if your programs are funding dependent, then I really encourage you to use at least because, they may ask, well, what if we do give you more? Well, we could do 10 more workshops then, or whatever it might be. Second goal, serve at least 150 individuals diagnosed with dementia and their caregivers through our in-person workshops in Northern California during 2025. Finally, increase the effectiveness of the program by creating a master workshop schedule, increasing the number of established volunteers to at least 10, providing consistent orientations, and holding a quarterly recognition. All right, a different example of some goals. This is for companion animals, but I thought the goals were good examples to just show you a different type of goal. Ultimately, the goal of our program is to help owners keep their pets by providing small grants for use towards emergency medical attention and surgeries and all these other different types of services. With this funding, we will do the following: provide 1 to 200 grants ranging from 100 to 500 to low-income individuals struggling to keep their pets and living in Napa, Sonoma, Solano, Mendocino, and Lake counties over the next 6 months. Through this program, reduce the number of animals in shelters and euthanized over the next 6 months. Provide courtesy posts for at least 25 pet owners who are no longer able to keep their pets to facilitate successful rehoming. So those are some goal examples. Now, population served. This is a description of who the grant will help. So things that you want to think about: if you serve humans in some way, what are the demographics that you can discuss? You want to talk about location demographics, and then, of course, various species that you may serve. It could be that you are just a rescue and permanent sanctuary and you simply serve animals, and that's totally fine. Example 1. We are located in Danville, California. Our spay-neuter program serves feral and community cats and the animal welfare organizations that help them in the greater San Francisco Bay Area, with the focus on, and it lists the counties. Second example, Fantastic Sanctuary is located downstate. As a rescue organization, we transport and offer sanctuary to any displaced wild burro who needs us. We are particularly interested in adopting groups of donkeys together, including herd mates and mom and baby pairs. Currently, our donkeys have come to us from the BLM and public land roundups and auctions in, and it lists the states. Fantastic Sanctuary has 2 types of clients. First and foremost, our clients are the wild burros we rescue and bring to our sanctuary as permanent residents. The well-being of these wonderful animals, many of whom have suffered massive traumas during roundups, is our highest priority. And after this, they also do talk about kind of a program that they are starting to grow, which is veteran ground-based therapy. So you can talk about both the animals you serve and the people that you serve. Now, if you've done a great job with your needs statement, you don't need too many statistics or pieces of information within the population served if you've already clarified that. But if your needs statement didn't really clarify some of the specific demographics of the population that you serve, then I would encourage you to do that. So for example, do you know what percent might be living below the federal poverty line? Or if you serve domestic violence survivors with ground-based therapy, how many of those are in your county? Things like that. So you can have some needs statement type statistics in the population served if that's appropriate. Budgets. So we're actually going to stop after the budget section to take budget only questions, because this is probably the area where I find people have the most questions. And I also, through my work, manage a grant. And in managing that for an organization, budgets is the area where we get the most questions. So this is the income and expenses that it will take to implement your program and project. And if you are not doing a program or project grant, you'll just have your operating budget for the year. So you're going to include income and expenses, and Colleen is going to drop a freebie for you guys. So as part of my Train Your Own Grant Writer course, I've got a ton of tools and templates. One of them is this program and project budget template. So this is for you only. Please don't share it because it's normally only available to people in the course. If you click on that, it's going to prompt you to make a copy for yourself. So just go ahead and make a copy, and then you will be able to edit that. So here's what the template looks like. You can replace the logo with your own logo, or you can just delete that cell if you want. And then you would put whatever the program name and year is. So this is only the top half of this. The top half is income. So for income, you probably haven't raised all the money you need to raise for your project yet, and that's okay. So you're going to list, I always list the grant that I am applying for first, and then I'll put any awarded grants and any pending grants. Then I will include other income sources. So if you have in-person fundraisers or just general donations, how much of that are you going to allocate towards this program? And then if there is program income, so if there are client copays for horse therapy, or if you have specific merchandise that you sell that is related to this program, you can put all of those income streams. Now, as you'll see on the example, I typically do not, if a grant is pending, I won't total that out. And so the projected income is basically that's the secured income so far, because you may put 10 applications out there for $10,000 each and only get one. You don't want it to look like you've earned more than you have when you just have pending applications out there. And that'll make sense in a minute when I show you the filled in example. Then you're going to put your expenses. This will vary widely depending on the program that you're working on. So you may have salaries or stipends or contractor payment, and then you could have different expense categories. Now, I want to show you where it says expense category 2. Let's say you're offering humane education or animal assisted therapy or anything like that that does involve humans. I would build some of the animal care for the specific animals you use for those programs into your budget. A lot of times people look at animal care as, oh, that's separate, that's general operations. Grants aren't going to fund that. We can't have animal assisted therapy without the animals. So you should absolutely be building in the care and shelter for your animals. And you can even put in something like preventative or regular care, and then you can put in fund for emergency care. I've earned a grant before for humane education where we put in $10,000 for just a fund for emergency care for the animal ambassadors, is what we called them. So that's kind of a creative way to get some animal care into your program budgets. And then you'll customize all of this. If you aren't super familiar with Google Sheets and you're working on the sheet and the different cells or how things get added up. The formulas get messed up just as you delete things. I can help you with that. We can talk via email and you can share your template with me, and I'm happy to go in and adjust the formulas so that it works if you're not comfortable doing that. So here's a filled in example. This is from the infrastructure redesign project for the donkey sanctuary. So here we have on the top the foundation they're requesting for, and notice we did not fill in that as earned because it's not been earned yet. And then we do have the awarded grants. And then finally, another one that was requested and how much was requested, but we did not put that as awarded. So this is going to represent the secured income, and then this would be potential. For this particular project, the organization was donating all of their labor. So we actually want to show that as a line item that is being covered, even though it's just a donation. So we have the labor donation and then other project income. And then the expenses, notice we're zeroing out the labor. So this is how much that labor would cost, but again, it's shown as a donation in the income. Then supplies and other expenses. Now notice our secured income was less than what our projected expenditures was because we want to show a need for this funding. So Colleen, do we have any questions about budgets?
We do not at this moment, but we did have a good question that would be good to just address really quick here. Someone was asking, they do know that we have this recorded, but they're asking if there's a way of doing a document version of that. And I don't know which way it's going to be shared with everybody in this group.
Yes, I am still working on that. So great question. Basically, this is a brand new presentation that I'm doing for you guys today, based on what Tessa wanted me to present to you. But part of this is going to be also done at a national conference, and so I have some ins and outs to work on in terms of what I can share and what can be public. But I am definitely happy to work with anybody who's looking for specific slides or things like that. I normally just give all my slides and PDFs out for everything, but this is just kind of unique in that this is the first time I'm doing this presentation, and it will be used at a national conference. So it's possible that I could, after that conference, which is in late February, get the entire PDF here. It'll depend on what makes it into the final cut of the second presentation. So I know that was a really long answer, but I would say you will definitely have the recording, and then I will communicate with Tessa, but also you can email me directly if there's certain parts that you want. Anything else, Colleen? Okay, I'm gonna try to kick up the speed here. I'm running a little bit behind, as I always do. Okay, evaluation plan. This is how you will evaluate your program. So you want to talk about your tracking systems, who's responsible for tracking, and your timeline. Example one, really great nonprofit, has a comprehensive animal tracking system using Google Sheets with numbers disaggregated by both program and species. Due to the unique nature of the variety of species we serve, this org has everything from chickens to pigs to community cats. Companion animal tracking software is not comprehensive enough to track all of the services we provide, so we have developed our own. Our executive director tracks all animals, updating on a monthly basis or more frequently. Second example, for our humane education program, the program director tracks each classroom we work with, the school district, its county, its Title I status, and the number of students served. These numbers are reviewed quarterly and annually. We also collect qualitative data such as teacher testimonials, a classroom survey, and student feedback. Now, when you're writing the evaluation plan, if it's a new program, you're making it up. You're basically just going to have to say what you are going to be doing, and that's completely fine. So, you can even say, here, our plan is to do this, and we're going to meet it and review quarterly or whatever it might be. But you may be creating it for the first time when you write the grant application for this. Sustainability plan. How will you keep this program going after the grant? So, things to discuss here. First, discuss if it's a one-time project or an ongoing program. What are your other sources of support? Will grant funding help you attract additional funding, or how will you use social media or other things in order to attract funding? This tends to be the most tantrum level section of most applications for people, because the reason you're applying for a grant is you need money for this program, and it can be hard to think ahead of how this program could truly sustain itself. But you want to give it your best shot. So here's a couple examples. This one is longer, but they really cover all the bases. Really great nonprofit is committed to continuing to expand our humane education program in the future. We will ensure its sustainability in multiple ways. First, we've worked diligently to curate a variety of income streams that support this program. Humane Ed is passionately backed by a major donor who has verbally committed to ongoing support and provided feedback on the 5-year plan. Additionally, it is a strong candidate for grant support, and we're implementing an active, sustained grant strategy. So, for almost any sustainability plan, you can talk about how you're going to go after more grants. And one other thing you can kind of say with that is we'll use the impact numbers from this grant implementation to validate future grant requests. You can say something like that. Another income stream is program income from dues related to our summer camp or fee-based on-site programs. And this is going to continue on the next page. Beyond curating income streams, we've worked hard to track impact numbers and build the program into one that genuinely impacts our community. As a result, our board, executive director, and other leaders support this program. These individuals have committed to budgeting the necessary funds to keep the program running, which could include allocating funding from general donations or other sources. So that one is long, but you can tell from the answer, the org is extremely committed to the program. They are going after grants, but it's not going to be grant dependent. Now, if you're program or project is just a one-time thing, that is a huge advantage to sustainability, because guess what? You don't rely on year-over-year funding. So you want to make that seem very attractive to a funder and say, hey, you can basically make this a reality, and then it's going to just be sustained over time. So here's an example. One advantage to our really great project is that it is a one-time project that will improve our facilities for years to come and will not require ongoing funding. In addition to this grant request, we are also applying to Foundation 1 and 2. Should the requests be partially funded, we plan to reach out to a few key donors to see if they would be willing to match any funds earned. We are determined to bring this project to completion within the next 12 to 18 months. Now we're going all the way back to the beginning, the summary. So once you've written all of those things, you can come up with your succinct summary of everything that you have in your proposal. And usually it is like, again, tantrum level of character or word counts. It'll say in 25 words or less, in 50 words or less, in 250 characters. So you basically want to just say, what do you want to do and why do you want to do it, with as much as you can with the words you're given. Example, Amazing Sanctuary is requesting $25,000 from the Generous Foundation as part of their community grants program. This grant will help fund our humane and character education program, impacting up to 2,300 youth over the next 12 months, both in person and virtually, ultimately creating a more compassionate future. If in your summary you can even just hint in a couple words at what the ultimate outcome is, that is going to be a great summary. Awesome Organization is seeking $10,000 of grant funding from Great Foundation to help us formalize a community clinic program with our human service partners. This program will target the pets and pet guardians with the greatest need for free veterinary services within their own communities. Funding will help us implement 9 pop-up community clinics in 2025. This foundation's funding will directly impact 500 people and pets in vulnerable communities. The program as a whole will impact 1,590 pets throughout the year. So those are a couple summary examples. Okay, a few more tips, and I'll make it super quick because of time. Almost all of the types of grants we've discussed, whether it's LOI or online form or full narrative, are going to require a lot of attachments. So the sooner you can gather these, the better. A lot of these are things we talked about in the grant readiness section, which is why I always talk a little bit about that. Another suggestion, draft all of your grants, including portal and online form grants, in a Google or Microsoft Word document. First of all, it's better for collaboration. It reduces the chance you will lose your work. Those portals, I'm telling you, you only have to go through it once where you lose everything, and you will never put anything directly into a portal. You will always put it in a Word doc or Google Doc first, because you can lose years off of your life. Finally, it will allow you to easily transfer the language into your master documents. Okay, so next steps. Colleen has a bunch of additional resources she is going to drop in there. Some of them are repeats from the grant readiness. Some of them are new things. If you are someone who is interested in learning how to write grants for your organization, learning how to research them, and get every single tool and template, the ones that we've talked about today and more, the Train Your Own Grant Writer course, we have a coupon code for you, Homes for Horses, that's good for 7 days. If you are watching this later, feel free to email me if you missed the window on that, because you're watching it a little bit late. And also, if anybody is watching the recording, if there are links that you need or you want any of these resources, but they're not readily available because you're not in the chat, just reach out to us. Colleen, do we have any questions?
On the Western Front, but you got lots of hearts and happiness going on here.
You guys made it so easy on Colleen. I mean, look, I was waiting for her to have to make tough decisions about which which questions were going to make the cut, but I guess you guys are just being super nice to her.
They're soaking in your wisdom. That's what it is.
Well, I truly hope I did not just read off the screen too much for everybody. I wanted to show you actual examples of all of those sections of the building blocks of your grant proposal. So thank you for bearing with me. And I definitely welcome your feedback via email about what was helpful, what wasn't helpful. Since this is the first time that I've done this exact presentation, it would be amazing to hear some of your thoughts. And again, feel free to email me at any time and I will be happy to respond to you. And I'm going to turn it back to Tessa.
You actually do have one question that just popped up right now.
Okay.
All right. So Tessa has asked, do you avoid or lean into repetition? I feel like some of the sections can be similar.
That's a great question. So if if you're dealing with character and word counts, I would avoid repetition because every single character is going to count. However, I am also a fan, and maybe it's just the English teacher in me, of filling the space. So if I've answered a question and I see I have 500 words left, and there are things I can reinforce from other sections, such as maybe something from the needs statement, I will go ahead and add that. I think it's very rare that I find myself with extra space to fill these days on grant applications, but that is a situation where I would have repetition, and otherwise I would just make every word count.
All right, we have another one here. If you resubmit a grant application from a previous year, do you change everything or just modify applicable dates?
Great question. So it depends on two
Data,
things.
sorry, data. Yeah.
Okay. One is, are you reapplying because you got the grant last time? Or are you reapplying because you didn't get it? So if you earned it last time, that means they liked the vast majority of your application. So I would only update it to include new impact numbers, new data. And even if it's not required, I would add something about how their grant helped you over the past year and what you want to build on from that in reapplying for this year. So that is if you are taking an application that was funded and you're customizing it. I would keep a lot of it because obviously they liked it. If it is something that was declined, first of all, if you can get on a quick phone call, Zoom, or have an email conversation with the funder, I would get feedback. You would be amazed if you reach out what you can get. I mean, I've even had state grants from California where they sent me the whole scoring rubric of how I was scored, which is incredibly helpful. So reach out and ask why wasn't it funded, and that will help you know what you need to improve upon. If you can't get that kind of information, which sometimes it's just not available, then I would lean towards changing more than less if it was something that was not funded. And that, it's kind of case by case thing, but I would change, as much as you feel you need to make it a fresh application that's hopefully addressing any concerns they had from the previous year.
Thanks, Stephanie. All right. We do have somebody asking with that coupon code that if they're interested in taking that train your own grant writer course, what they're looking at.
Okay, so that is $4.99, and that includes, it's a totally self-paced course with 30 lessons and has quarterly live sessions with me and Colleen. It's usually a really small group, so you basically come in and we help you with anything you need help with. So with the 10% off, that's going to be $50 off, and you have access for the entire life of the course. Most people can work through it in 30 to 60 days if you're getting in there just about every day. But if you want to take 6 months to do it, that's absolutely fine too.
To do my little plug too, because I took Stephanie's course. So I'm a sanctuary rescue person myself. I took her course knowing nothing about grants and like literally transformed what we could do at our sanctuary and a number of my other fellow friends' sanctuaries and rescues. So her course it's like worth every dime. It's gold.
She's being super humble. She's earned 6 figures for her sanctuary and a lot more for other sanctuaries, mostly because she's awesome. But I am super grateful that Colleen took the course, so now we can work together. Okay, thank you, everybody. Out of respect for time, we are about 4 minutes over. I'm going to stop sharing and kick it back to Tessa for any final thoughts.
Well, thank you so much, Stephanie. That was so fantastic. So much incredible information. And you're getting lots of love in the chat from everybody. I think they thought it was awesome too. So, again, thank you for being here. Thanks, Colleen, for your support as well. And thank you to everybody who attended. Feel free to email me, email Stephanie with any questions, and I'll get the recording out to you in the next few days. Everybody, have a good afternoon.
Thanks, everybody.